Hiya, my name is Jess and welcome to my channel. Have a look at this. Today I'm going to be talking to you about my top 10 most influential books. So I saw a tag like this circling YouTube about a year ago and it was one of the videos that most made me want to create my own channel. So I thought a year on it would be really nice to just sort of reuse it and talk to you about the books that have influenced my life in some big way. In the original tag I think they just kind of listed the books and didn't give any explanation, but I feel that this video would be more interesting to look back on how these books influenced me, whether it was like, you know, kindling my love of reading or introducing me to a new genre. So let's just get in with the first book. So the first book series that really influenced me was the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. So I was 7 or 8 when I first read Harry Potter, and for me this was the book series that really just, I mean, I had always been a reader and I'd always enjoyed reading, but reading this series was the first time I'd had that really magical experience of just being completely enveloped and involved and invested in a fictional world. Sounds really cheesy now, but the things that Harry Potter taught me then have stayed with me until now and will probably stay with me until far into the future. I think ultimately what makes this book so influential is it was the book series that probably made me into the reader that I am today. I don't know if I would have been as into reading as I am now if it hadn't have been for Harry Potter years and years ago. So of course that was going to be on my influential book list, as I'm sure it is for a lot of people. Next we have Inkheart by Cornelia Funk. I never learned how to say her last name in all of the years that I was reading her books. I think what was really influential for me about Inkheart was the fact that it kind of put into words the reading experience, or at least how it was to me. Books and reading are such an important part of this series, and the entire premise was a really magical and engaging one that for me just encouraged reading. Every chapter of this book started with a short excerpt from a variety of other books, and I actually ended up picking up a lot of the books that were recommended to me through these pages. So in a way I think not only did this encourage my reading, but it specifically recommended further reading to me, which was really enjoyable, and it was something that I think I needed back then, was kind of that push to start reading more and more things and more diverse things. Next on my list we have The Princess Diaries by Meg Cabot. So I started reading The Princess Diaries when I was about 11 or 12 years old, so kind of like that tween age, and I finished reading when I was 14, I think. And without a doubt these books definitely shaped my early teenage and tween years in a really positive way. Before The Princess Diaries I had pretty much exclusively read fantasy, and so this was the first time where I'd read a book that had a main character that personality wise was extremely similar to me and to my friends. And a lot of the situations that she found herself in were situations that I could relate to. I mean, apart from the fact that she was a princess. Again, this sounds so cheesy, but a lot of the lessons that this book contains about, you know, staying true to yourself and friendship and family were ones that I think I really needed when I was around 12 or 13, and so I've reread this series more times than I can count, and it's a 10-book series, and every time it's like going home. Next on my list we have the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan. Oh, that cover's reflecting weirdly. I started reading this series a little while after I started reading The Princess Diaries, and it was a very similar experience for me to Harry Potter in that it opened my eyes again to the magic of reading, and it was something about reading about a world as magical and as mythical as the Percy Jackson world that I just found so engaging. Hadn't really been reading much outside of Harry Potter rereads and Princess Diaries rereads, and maybe a casual few other books thrown in there, but these kind of reminded me that there were more fantasy worlds out there, and it blew my mind, and I loved it, and I still love it. Next on my list we have To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This book says a lot about kindness and cruelty, I think, in a very human and in a very I don't want to say basic, but in a very just everyday, honest, reflective way. Reading about Atticus Finch restored my cynical 13-year-old faith in humanity to a degree, and I just think that what this book says about about kindness and about people is just so important, and it's something that came in a period of my life where I kind of needed to read about that, and it was really, really wonderful. Next up is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. Firstly, Markus Zusak's writing is just gorgeous. This is one of the first books where I didn't just think about the story, but I thought about the writing, and I think that was very influential. I think this also says a lot about survival and kindness and family, and I think it sheds light on a historical event in a way that wasn't happening before, and in a way that I found to be very unique and very moving. Next we have The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. So I read this book really recently in the autumn of 2015, and I think the reason why this was so influential to me was because it stimulated an interest in women in literature more than anything, I think. The future society that Margaret Atwood creates is just so vivid and horrifying, and it really made me think about so many things in just a new and terrifying light. Before reading The Handmaid's Tale, my experience of dystopia had been like The Hunger Games and Divergent, and this was unlike anything I'd ever read, and I think that was very, very influential. Now we're into the last 3 books, and next up it is Saving Francesca by Melina Marchetta. I discovered Melina Marchetta's writing last year, and she has fast become my favourite YA author and one of my favourite authors in general. She writes about family and bonds in a way that is just so accurate yet not melodramatic. It's honest, I think, is the best way to describe her writing. Honest and moving and wonderful, and for me, Saving Francesca it just embodies all of that. For me, identity is a really important theme in all of Melina Marchetta's works, and I think the character of Francesca was a character that I could relate to very closely in terms of identity, in terms of her relationship with her mother, and it was a very emotional reading experience for me because I think it was a very personal reading experience for me. In short, this is a book that just really made me reflect on who I was, and it was strange but at the same time really influential into how I perceive myself now. I don't think that sentence made any sense, but it was a very transformative reading experience for me. Next is a book I don't have a physical copy of to show you, but it is Villette by Charlotte Bronte. I debated whether to put Villette or Jane Eyre on this list. Both are by Charlotte Bronte, and both I think were very influential. In the end, I decided that of the two, Villette had the more profound influence. I think just because it was the most connected I have ever felt to a classical protagonist ever. Lucy Snow is just a character who goes through a lot of emotional turmoil in Villette, and the way that Charlotte Bronte kind of presented that and presented her kind of emotional struggle, her mental struggle, was something that I found to be so interesting and unique to anything I've read around that time period or anything I've read in general. Kind of just redefined classics for me. I've always enjoyed classical books, but I think Villette was just one of the most relevant books that I've ever read to myself, if that makes any sense at all, and it was a really influential reading experience. And finally, another book I do not have with me right now, it's actually a poetry anthology, which is the 20 Poemas de Amor y una Canción Desesperada by Pablo Neruda, and I'm sorry if any of you are Spanish and I just butchered that pronunciation completely. Short poetry anthology, which I actually finished this month, was very influential to me because it's one of the first full-length works that I've read in Spanish. It was the first time that I really understood how much languages and different languages can kind of broaden your mind, because there were so many different ways that both poems could have been translated, and there were so many different ways of expressing the same thoughts and the same feelings. It made me think a lot about language, which is something I don't often think about when I read. Well, it is something I think about, but not to the extent that I thought about when reading this poetry anthology, and so that was a very unique reading experience for me, and one that I think is very influential, as it's inspired me to try and read more world literatures and more literatures in Spanish, although with the aid of a dictionary, because I don't speak very good Spanish. There you have it, those are my top 10 most influential books. If there are any books that particularly influenced you, I would be very interested to know, so leave a comment below. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon, so goodbye.